Hello. Shoulders exposed for the gods. Welcome everyone, hello. We're gonna start off this video very interactive, very much together. So pause it right now, grab a piece of paper and a pen and come back. I'm gonna ask you a few questions just to get ourselves started. Question 1, how would you define your sexuality? Are you straight? Are you gay? Are you lesbian? Are you bisexual? Are you pansexual? Are you on the A spectrum? What's your sexuality? Write it down. Second question is, would you ever date a bisexual person? Bisexual man, woman, envy, anyone? Would you ever date a bisexual person? Would you ever date a pansexual person? Write down yes or no on your piece of paper. Now I want you to take like 2 minutes and write down why you answered yes or no. And I don't want you to say it's just my preference. We get it. I get that it's just your preference, but I want you to ask yourself why. Take some time to reflect on your own, okay? Are you done? Okay, so in this video, we're gonna address probably everything you wrote down on that piece of paper. So it might make you a little bit uncomfortable, might make you a little bit anxious, confused, angry, defensive. So write down those emotions that you feel so you can understand how you feel in these types of conversations, and let's get into it. What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm T Blizzy. This is Taboo Tidbits, where we discuss taboo and controversial topics free of censorship from society. If you don't already know, I have an apparel brand. It is called Controversial Apparel. It is made for the purpose of facilitating controversial and uncomfortable conversations to better our society as a whole. So if you want to check it out, click the link in my description. Let's just get straight into it, because the people who actually need to watch this video probably aren't going to watch it, and if they are watching, they're probably not going to stay for very long. So I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. Obviously, you see by the title that this video is about bi and panphobia. I already made an entire 10-part series on TikTok explaining this. So if you don't want to watch this whole video, go to my TikTok page, the link is in my description, watch that series, you're gonna learn a lot. The reason I'm making this YouTube video is because people on TikTok still weren't really getting the point. Okay, so we're here to have a more in-depth, interactive discussion. This has been a topic of conversation for a long time, but it's specifically been hot on TikTok because this creator named Keita Rose made a video response to another creator who was asking why women don't like to date bisexual and pansexual men. Let's take a quick look at that video.
To the women that don't really date bisexual, pansexual males, right? Why is that?
How you doing? I'm personally just not attracted to it. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't want another man coming to me as a man or a woman. I'm not sure how that works.
If you want to go watch the whole video, you can just go to my TikTok page. But already, she said, I don't want another man coming to me as a man or a woman. I don't know how that works. So initially, I perceived that as her saying that bisexual men are women and are feminine. Obviously, that's hella biphobic, but that's besides the point. But she later explained that what she meant is that if a man cheats on her, she doesn't want that person to be a man. Why does it matter? At the end of the day, you got cheated on. That sucks. You should be upset regardless. But why would it matter if you were cheated on with another man compared to if it was with a woman? Why would that matter more to you? You got some stuff to unpack. Let's see some more.
Hey T Blizzy. It's weird when a community of people who fight to love who they want to love get mad when people love who they want to love. I believe that bi men can be faithful, masculine, and excellent human beings. I am not going to be in a relationship with one. The problem lies where you try to push people to be with people they don't want to be with and then get confused when the relationship doesn't work out.
All right. Like I said, I've already made response videos to all of this. This is not the main point of the video, but I just want everyone to see common responses. This is typically what happens when people are called out for being biphobic, panphobic, homophobic, transphobic. This is the type of response that they get. How dare you try to force us to like people we don't like? No one's forcing you. No one's pushing you. We're gonna get into that later. It's the gaslighting for me. It really is. It's not cute. No. A lot of people have been putting in their input and saying, yeah, I don't want to date bisexual men. I see that as weird. I see that as gross. I'm just not that into it. It's just not my preference. But no one's really telling us why. And I feel as though people are avoiding that explanation and avoiding asking themselves why they don't like to date bisexual men. Because deep down they know that their reasonings aren't the best. So let's start with the main argument of this entire conversation, and is surrounding bisexual men. Women not liking to date bisexual men. First, let's start off by answering why this conversation is centered around bisexual men and not bisexual and pansexual women. Here's the thing. Bisexuality and pansexuality in women, or people who are perceived as women, is typically fetishized. Myself, for example, I am pansexual. My attraction to women typically is fetishized by men. They see that as something that's attractive. They're like, oh wow, you're into women too? Can I join? All that gross stuff that they like to do. In my personal opinion, femininity, and I'm putting quotations around femininity and masculinity because personally I think the societal definitions of all of those things are ridiculous and extremely constricting. That's just my opinion. So femininity is a lot more fluid and femininity is a lot more open than masculinity. I think masculinity is extremely constricting. So as a woman, I, relatively speaking, I'm allowed to explore my sexuality. I'm still gonna receive a lot of homophobia and panphobia and just hatred in general for not being straight. We live in a heteronormative society, duh. But it's going to be to a lesser extent than if a man were to come out as bisexual or pansexual. With bisexual men, their attraction to men is seen as feminine. Feminine aspects within men are seen as bad. All of that is rooted in misogyny. So when people say they're uncomfortable with the fact that bisexual men also sleep with men, that's rooted in a little bit of homophobia, rooted in a little bit of biphobia and panphobia, rooted in a little bit of misogyny. That is why this conversation has been centered around specifically bisexual men, because it's just less socially acceptable.
Hi, and welcome to an additional summary for those who still don't get it. Why does this conversation center bi and pan men? Well, simply stated, it's due to societally constructed gender roles. Men are expected to be 100% masculine 100% of the time. If they teeter-totter outside of that box, they are considered no longer masculine. So, take a second, read this over. It is due to societally constructed gender roles, the patriarchy, toxic ideas of masculinity, heteronormativity, homophobia, biphobia, panphobia, etc., and all of that is linked to misogyny. Moving on.
Let's get into the next part. The most common response that I've been seeing from people, women specifically, is that it's just my preference. It's just my preference to not want to date bisexual men.
You can't force me. How dare you LGBTs try to force me to date y'all? Y'all are crazy. Y'all won't let us love who we want to love. Blah, 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 blah.
I can't believe I have to give this disclaimer, but no one cares who you date. Date who you want to date. I don't know you. I'm not holding a gun to your head. I'm not forcing you to do anything. So if you feel forced, that's a you problem. No one's forcing you to watch this video. You can just keep scrolling. All we are asking you to do is reflect, introspect on your personal preferences because they may be rooted in prejudice and bias. That's all we're asking you to do. This is a common question that I ask women when they say they don't want to date bisexual men. Let's say you come across a man, you really like him, you guys are really vibing, right? You're attracted to him physically, emotionally, spiritually, right? Then you have a conversation, he tells you that he's bi, and all of a sudden your entire perception of him changes. You should probably unpack where that came from. So that's why it doesn't make sense when people say that they're just not that into bisexual men or bisexual people in general, because bisexuality is not a personality trait, it's not a gender. So it doesn't make you any less straight to date a bisexual person, number one. You can't tell if someone's bisexual or pansexual just by looking at them. Like if you looked at me, could you tell that I'm pan? No, I would have to tell you. So when people say they're not attracted to bisexual people, what they're saying is that there's something about their bisexuality or their pansexuality that makes them uncomfortable or that makes them unattracted. That doesn't make sense. That's why it's important to unpack where that came from. What about their bi and pansexuality makes you unattracted to them?
Hi, and welcome to another quick summary for those who still don't get it. If bi and pansexuality makes you uncomfortable, let's unpack why. Some of the common reasons for bi-pan aversion would be just classic homophobia, right? Just feeling generally uncomfortable with the notion that your boyfriend has been with other men or your girlfriend has been with other women in the past. Number 2, insecurity. Having this perception that bi and pan people have more options, and if you feel generally insecure with yourself or in the relationship, you may feel as though they're more likely to cheat on you. That also goes hand in hand with the bi and panphobia stereotypes. You'll often hear that bi and pan people are more likely to cheat, more likely to be promiscuous, more likely to have STDs, etc. So those two go hand in hand. Lastly, unfamiliarity. Just genuinely not understanding bi and pansexuality, not ever having really interacted with those people, not really understanding what it means, so wanting to stay away from that because of that reason.
This is all stuff that I explained in my series, but I'm going to show you some of the common responses that I've been receiving from that. Let's take a look at one of them right now.
I ain't gonna lie, yo, this biphobic shit got me tight, and I ain't even gonna hold you. I'm being honest. I just don't get it, because I'm seeing a lot of bisexual and gay men saying this shit about black women, which is surprising enough to me, because who do you come out to? You don't come out to your father, you come out to us, who defend y'all from these homophobes, these actual biphobic people. Who defends you from them? Black women. We have been in the front of everybody's fucking fight since forever, and it really bothers me, right? The fact that you would sit there and think, because I don't want to be romantically involved with you, I don't want to be in your pants, that I'm an issue, and that you scratching everything that I did for you and your community because I don't want to sleep with you. They already stereotype y'all as predators. This don't make it look any damn good. And I think it's the new school ones, because my goddad is bisexual. I've been around gay men my whole entire life, and I never heard them talk down on no fucking black woman because she don't want to satisfy your needs in the damn bedroom. Is you sick? So continue digging your own grave, because this is just going to force people not to want to fuck with y'all, because it's weird. It's weird. It's predatory.
So we're seeing a lot of anger, we're seeing a lot of frustration, we're seeing a lot of defensiveness, and we're seeing a lot of projection. I'm showing that video because it's honestly one of the worst ones that I had seen, because it includes an element of gaslighting, saying, how dare you say that I'm biphobic, I've always been supporting you. I already made a video on this, and I explained how that's exactly what white people do to us, right? When they say, how dare you call me racist, I was always supporting you in BLM and everything, so it's impossible for me to be racist. And this person is saying, well, I love bisexual people and I've always been supporting you, so it's impossible for me to have any type of biphobic tendencies. And this comes from people who have a lack of understanding of how we are socialized in the society we live in. These are people who probably have never studied sociology, probably have never studied gender and sexuality, and people who probably don't understand the aspect of prejudice and implicit bias and how all of those things affect us. This is where it starts to get dangerous. This is why so many bisexual and pansexual men remain on the DL, because even the people who support the community don't actually support the community. It's only until they have to reflect upon their own prejudices and their own biases, then all of a sudden they're the victims, right? And this is what I'm seeing a lot from straight women specifically, straight black women specifically. Y'all, come on. All we're trying to do is facilitate a healthy conversation with y'all to let y'all know that you might have some biphobic and panphobic tendencies and biases that you need to unpack. And the response is this type of anger and this type of frustration, instead of just taking the time to sit down and listen and try to understand. I've said this once and I'll say it again. Being a black woman does not absolve us from being socialized in the biphobic, panphobic, racist, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, ableist society that we live in. We all have all of those ideologies ingrained within us, and it's all of our jobs to unpack those things. This is the most common type of response that I've been seeing when straight people specifically get angry during this conversation. And again, it just reminds me of white fragility. Like, it reminds me of when white people get mad when you suggest that they have any type of racist preferences or racist ideologies, or may have said something racist, and they flip out and they react like that. It's very, very, very similar. The problem is, and I've said this in my series already, but the problem is people don't like being associated with icky words. You're biphobic, you're panphobic, you're racist, you're misogynistic, you're homophobic, you're transphobic, you're homophobic, because so many of us don't actually understand what those words mean. They take offense to it, right? And I'm gonna put some comments up here showing how people literally see those words as offensive, right? People are saying, oh, how dare you come for straight people? You are actually being oppressive to straight people because you're trying to gaslight them into dating y'all. All we're doing is saying that you may have preferences that are rooted in bigotry. You can unpack that, or you cannot unpack that. It's up to you. For some reason, straight people have created this idea in their minds that this entire conversation started off with like this giant group of bisexual men who were like purposely going for straight women who didn't like them and are now just making a fuss. Who, when, where, how did you guys come up with this idea? That's not what happened. People started exposing their biphobia online. We started calling it out and trying to educate. And then of course, that's where the ego kicked in. That's where the defensiveness kicked in, right? Because people want so badly not to be associated with those ugly words because they don't actually understand the words beyond the dictionary definition. Issue is the suffix, phobia, right? People think, oh, well, a phobia means that I'm scared. And I'm not scared of bisexual people, so you're wrong. When it's way deeper than that. People tend to think of biphobia and panphobia and racism and misogyny in their most extreme forms, when they often present themselves in insidious ways, or they'll present themselves in the form of microaggressions. And it's really important for us to take the time to listen when people within the community are trying to tell you that what you're saying is problematic, instead of immediately getting defensive. And I'm specifically talking to Black women here because we should know how it feels when we try to call people out on their racism and on their misogyny and they immediately get defensive and they don't want to listen to us, because that's exactly what y'all are doing. And I'm specifically calling out Black women because Black women are at the forefront of this conversation against bisexual men. And like, I'm really tired of seeing it. If you don't want to reflect, that's on you. That's fine. Keep scrolling. Lastly, let's get into some solutions. So one of the comments here says, how do you go about changing problematic preferences? I know I have them, but I also know I can't change my attraction. So what now? So people are asking, why does this matter, right? I can't change who I like. That's where I disagree. You can prefer someone who has long hair over short hair, and that's fine, do you. But when your preferences are rooted in some form of bigotry, when you start to unpack that and you start to unlearn those toxic ideologies that have been ingrained within you, you're gonna see that your preferences are actually going to start to shift, because you didn't come up with that idea, right? Your aversion to bisexual people didn't come out of thin air. Like, you didn't come up with that idea on your own. You were socialized to believe that. And I already gave this example on my TikTok, but I'll give it again. A preference that I have that I'm really working to unpack is preferring people who are taller than me, right? Because one day I asked myself, I was like, okay, why does it matter? Like, why do I want someone who's taller than me? And then I came to the realization that I didn't come up with that idea on my own. That wasn't a unique thought. Like, that, I was socialized to believe that. That's all I see in every single TV show and every single movie. There's always a taller guy and a shorter girl in this loving relationship, right? It's all we ever see. So I was socialized to believe that I had to be with someone taller because it made me feel smaller and more petite and more feminine. Because I'm a woman, I'm supposed to be feminine, and that's all so stupid. So I'm working to break that down and to unpack that. And I'm slowly starting to see my attraction changing, right? I'm slowly starting to not care if someone's taller than me. My last girlfriend was shorter than me and I didn't care. That's something that a year ago I think I would have cared about. So at the end of the day, it's really up to whether or not you feel as though you want to break down and unpack your biases. We all have these biases, okay? This is not just towards straight people. Bisexual people also say that they don't want to date other bisexual people. Pansexual people say the same thing. Lesbian people say the same thing. Like, it's not just towards straight people. I don't know why straight people think that they're being attacked, because we all have biases and prejudices that we all need to unpack. If you want to take the time to understand where your prejudices and biases come from, you can take the time to analyze them. And the way to do that is to educate yourself. Educate yourself on misogyny and how that presents itself in the society we live in. Educate yourself on homophobia and transphobia. Educate yourself on toxic fragile masculinity and the patriarchy. That's where it starts. Then you're going to start to see the world through a different lens. Then you're going to start to see your preferences change a little bit. And if they don't, that's fine. At the end of the day, you might not ever meet a bisexual person ever in your life, right? And you might always have that preference that excludes them. But at least if you come to the realization that your preference was not your own idea, that your preference is rooted in a form of bigotry that warrants some unpacking, that's literally all we're asking. Because at the end of the day, that's what's gonna make our world a little bit better. I hope this video was helpful. As I mentioned, I already made a 10-part series, and I feel like that series explains everything in a more concise manner. I would really suggest you watch that. But I wanted to come on here to make more of like an interactive type video and actually ask people to unpack their own biases at the beginning so that they can kind of understand why that question was asked. And now we're at this point at the end. In terms of the definition of biphobia and panphobia, write it down. Get that piece of paper and write it down. What do you think it means? If you go to the dictionary definition, it's going to tell you that biphobia is an aversion to bisexual people, rooted in stereotypes and prejudices, etc. And people are going to read that definition and they're going to think the most extreme things, like, oh, biphobic people are people who like hate bi people and want them to die. That's not what it is. Simply having this negative feeling toward bisexual people is likely rooted in biphobia. So just because you have some biphobic preferences doesn't mean you're a terrible, awful, disgusting human. It just means that you were socialized in a biphobic society like we all were, and you just need to unpack it. That's it. That's all we're saying. We're not calling you monsters. Hopefully this video was helpful. Like I said, I would still advise you to watch that 10-part series because it explains it way better than I did in this video. This was really just to have a quick conversation about how biphobia presents itself and how you may actually be perpetuating those ideologies without even knowing it. If you have any questions, throw them in the comment section. I'm going to try my best to answer all of them. Take the time to reflect. If you haven't already, I posted a YouTube video about dating preferences as it pertains to race and ethnicity, so check that out. I'm going to link it here and in the description below. And again, it's another interactive exercise that's going to help you understand where your prejudices and your preferences come from. So take the time, analyze, reflect. If you don't want to, whatever, that's fine, but there's no need for you to cry in my comment sections saying, how dare you call me a bad person? Like, at that point, you're just projecting because I don't know you personally. So anyways, I hope this was helpful. Like, subscribe, more content is coming soon, and I'm out.
Only took this